All right, the group of you that just came in, if you would scan that QR code, it'll help Kim and I take attendance and break you into cohorts and get you that engagement point for today. If you can't do it, no problem. We have other ways of capturing your attendance. It's just helpful for Kim and I. And with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. So thank you all for joining us for this second Friday Live with Kristine Ball. And I believe Kristine has Jean Sludge with her today to help answer questions about onboarding. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to y'all. You're on mute, Kristine.
Terrible way to begin a presentation. However, I did say thank you so much, Mariah and Kim. I am so grateful to have this platform to be able to speak, especially as a Supervisor Pathways alum. I'm grateful for this initiative. I think this is a phenomenal way to, again, better engage one another and learn about all the different aspects of the university. So I'm so grateful to be able to have this opportunity to speak to the group. Onboarding is actually something that I absolutely love. Throughout my time at Auburn, I've been with Auburn since, well, I guess full-time since 2013. I did join the university in several part-time capacities since 2009. But however, been in that full-time position since 2013. I initially started with the athletics department. I served with the academic program, and I served for about 8 years before transitioning with HR. But during my time with the athletics department, I did have several HR responsibilities. So I managed payroll. I onboarded a ton of student employees. And it was an interesting process. For students, again, it's very different than when you're talking about full-time employees or even faculty members for that matter. But it's still unique. Nevertheless, every individual that comes into the university has a very unique situation. And so those are some of the things that we're going to talk about today. So that's just a little bit about me in terms of my history with the university. Again, I've been the manager of the Onboarding Center for the past year. I absolutely love what I do. A lot of you all that may be on this call that I engage with on a frequent basis know I have a lot of high energy. Every time we speak, it's going to be a smile. Even when there are issues, I find silver linings because it's always going to be a learned lesson and something that we hopefully won't face again. So, you know, I want people to understand within this platform that I am always going to be a resource for you. I will try to unblock barriers or challenges to the successful onboarding of your new employees. So, you know, concluding today's session, I hope this provides you with a little bit more insight on onboarding processes. And I hope today also provides you with the opportunity to share your thoughts. Kim and Mariah kind of alluded to, you know, a lot of individuals as their Supervisor Pathways project have some interest in onboarding, whether it's defining a better onboarding process for your department or whatever that may be. I would love to get with you or to share ideas, or if there's anything that you think that could be essential to the entire university in terms of onboarding practices. We're still fairly new. We're still, you know, figuring this out and adding on new things. So anything that you have is going to be welcome, and more likely than not, we'll try to integrate it. So again, I appreciate your interest in onboarding and taking the time to be with us today. I'm going to turn things over to Jean Sludge, who's one of our onboarding specialists, just so he can also share some insight about himself and how he's joining us today. So without further ado, go ahead, Jean.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jean Sludge. I'm one of the onboarding specialists here at Auburn University. It's been a pleasure working with everyone so far, and I love what I do so far with Kristine and my assistance here today, just to assist Kristine whatever capacity that she may need me, and to assist her with answering any questions or anything. And I am just elated just to be here and just to watch her do her presentation on the supervisor pathway.
Awesome. Okay, so just as I guess a couple of housekeeping, I do want to share that, you know, I want engagement. So for me, feel free at any time to chime in, to ask a question. We definitely are, you guys hopefully have input some of the questions that you had that you would like us to discuss today. A lot of that will be covered in the presentation, but we'll also go through the formal questions that you guys submitted during your registration for today's session. So we're going to touch on all of that. I did want to at least provide somewhat of a presentation for you guys, just in case you needed more insight on as to what our processes are. And depending on when you went through the Supervisor Pathways orientation, a lot of our processes may have either changed or evolved. So I do want to recap that because we have had some very recent developments that may be of interest to you if you've not already been exposed to them. So again, throughout this presentation, feel free to say, Kristine, you're talking way too fast, or Kristine, I have a question about this, or can you clarify this? Anything that you need. I don't mind if you unmute, but perhaps it may be more efficient to add it in the chat. I'm pretty much open, but I don't know for the sake of recording if it's best to put it in the chat. That way it's very clean and everyone can all of the questions or comments or concerns can be communicated through one individual instead of a ton of different voices. Is there a preference, Kim and Mariah? Have you found that there is one preference over another, or just in terms of recordings and efficiency and all the trainings that you do? Have you noticed a pattern?
I think it's good either way, whichever you prefer. If you prefer to hear voices.
I love to hear voices. I want to know that the audience is engaged, that they're listening, I love to hear from the people that I work with on a daily basis. Sometimes, especially during this COVID, phenomenon, I don't get to engage much. We may talk via email, but I don't get to see everyone's faces. So I would love for you to just chime in at any point throughout this presentation.
Okay.
This is also unscripted. I typically do try to have somewhat of a script, but this is something I'm passionate about. This is something I know very well. So if if it becomes a little shaky, it's because I'm not using the script. I don't typically read from one, but I typically have guidelines. But this time I'm gonna go free because I want you guys to feel comfortable. I don't want you to think that this is so scripted that if you have questions you're afraid to answer just in case we don't get to the end of the presentation. This is all about you and what you would like to glean from this session. So Onboarding Live. Basically what I wanted to place emphasis on is the supervisor's impact on new employees. So where we're going to start today is really discussing I guess two things. The first thing is last week you all were charged with researching onboarding and what that meant, and what are some things that you would implement in the onboarding practices within your organization, whether you're a current supervisor or an aspiring supervisor. So I want you guys, again, we'll try to manage it one at a time, but I do want to hear from you guys as to what you have learned. And then I also want you to be thinking about from our very beginning orientation, a supervisor's pathway orientation, when we talked about onboarding and I introduced you to what that was, how has your perspective of onboarding changed since then, based on all of your experiences through this program thus far? So again, those two things are something that I want you guys to just openly discuss. And again, you can have a response to one and not the other. You can have a question. I see I missed a question mark at the end of this. How have your perceptions of onboarding changed? So again, feel free to comment on either, but I do want to hear your thoughts. And then we'll open it back up in Streamline. So what are your thoughts? Feel free to unmute. And if you care to put it in the chat, Jean will answer those for me or will comment on those for us.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
This is Burnett. I was curious as far as onboarding is concerned. When a new employee comes into the university, is it the responsibility of the supervisor or onboarding to welcome them properly or to submit packets to them? Is that your job or the supervisor's job?
Question. So let's talk a little bit about that. And we'll explore this more down the line as we get through the presentation. But I would say, and I think this is a great way to start this conversation, I'm going to really put the onus on the supervisor, because you're going to be the individual that works with this employee each and every day. You're going to be the make or break. And I remember saying that during the orientation, supervisor pathway orientation. You know, if you fail to make that connection on the front end, what type of message is that going to send to that employee? Now, yes, it is onboarding's responsibility from a logistical standpoint that, yes, we have certain triggers in our system that will notify us when we need to reach out and have them complete paperwork. But I think along that line, the supervisor should be very ingrained in that process to say, you know, we're excited to have you come on board. You know, we are, have you received any new hire paperwork from the onboarding center? You know, do you have any questions about that paperwork? And even if you don't feel apt to being able to address those questions, it's really important for you to have a relationship with your department admin who may be initiating or managing some of those onboarding processes, as well as knowing exactly who your onboarding specialist is. So our onboarding team is I guess defined or we are designated by divisions. So each respective division of the university has a respective onboarding specialist that will be working with them personally. So again, I think it's important for you to maintain that relationship with either your department admin or your onboarding specialist. So that way, as you're hiring a new employee, you do understand that it's still a part of your responsibility, regardless of whose true defined responsibility it is, which is us. So again, you won't be providing them with paperwork. These are all things that we will be doing, but you may want to still communicate with them to make sure there are no obstacles. I mean, if that employee is getting ready to join your staff in the next 3 days, but they've yet to receive anything, there may be something that has gone under the table that hasn't hit our radar, which may be a trigger for you to be involved, because that will impact their overall onboarding experience. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. Thank you.
Absolutely. No, my pleasure. Thank you for engaging with me and asking the first question. That's often difficult to be the first. So thank you so much, Ms. Burnett. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions?
Kristen, I have one question. It's if the supervisor is the one that needs to kind of help take the lead, will the supervisor then be provided with maybe some type of checklist, or to know what the other departments or other areas, their responsibilities, so that nothing does fall through the cracks? So if we have a checklist, we can talk with the new hire and say, has this happened or has this happened? And then we can reach out as supervisors to make sure, or to check with someone. So is there some type of checklist as to IT issues or benefits issues or other things that would need to take place?
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that. So one of the things is there is a defined checklist, but let's talk about what that checklist looks like and how you have access to it. So a couple of things with that. The first thing is we utilize a system called People Admin. People Admin is what facilitates our onboarding processes. And defined, or rather embedded in People Admin, is a respective checklist that the employee will need to complete. Now, you do have visibility to that as the hiring supervisor for a respective employee. However, we have a lot of supervisors on campus that choose to be removed from those onboarding processes. And thus, we have department admins that we are making sure they have the correct access in the system. Now, I think that is a little shaky, because we would prefer to have everyone involved in the process. But we do have, we've received a lot of feedback that depending on the department, how large the department is, how small it is, determines how involved a supervisor is with their respective hires. So I say that to say, if you would like to be more involved in the onboarding processes, then all you have to do is simply reach out to your department admin or myself, and you can simply send us an email and say, I'm hiring the following individual. May I have visibility within People Admin to monitor that employee's progress? So your question specifically is about a checklist. From a supervisor standpoint, there is no checklist that tells you specifically what needs to be accomplished, but it does show you what the employee needs to do, so that way you can have an engaging conversation with them about their progress in those steps. And if they indicate that there are any issues, then perhaps you or your department admin can work through those obstacles with them. And I do plan to show you throughout this presentation exactly what their view looks like and what you would subsequently have access to as well to see on their behalf. I will throw out this as well. I don't know if should be shared, but before People Admin and before the Onboarding Center became a thing with the university, there were a number of checklists that did exist on the university's website. So if you just search within the Auburn University's website in their search field and you type in something like new hire checklist, if you select that, it will pretty much mimic the same checklist that we're utilizing in People Admin, but it is somewhat outdated. So I would use that as a guide, but not from I don't want to say biblical stance, but you don't want to use it to the T, because a lot of that may be outdated at this point, but at least it'll give you a glimpse as to what responsibilities you may have throughout this process. So again, in the Auburn University website, in the search field, just type in new hire checklist, and you should see a number of checklists that that HR has used in the past.
Hey, Kristine,
what other questions? Yes.
you've got a couple questions in the chat here.
Yeah, let's go, because I know we only have an hour though, right?
Yeah.
Mariah?
Yeah, yeah.
I'll be mindful of our time.
Let's see. On the checklist question, what if an individual transfers from another department as no departments are the same?
Great question. So one of the things that we do, and I know this is actually a similar question was asked in the pre-session questions. So when an employee is moving from one department to another, they are provided with the same checklist. However, we have really encouraged throughout this process that departments identify their own or specialized or unique processes that we can then embed into our People Admin workflow. And that is the thing. So OIT has one, facilities has one, I want to say enrollment management has one. There are different programs that have taken advantage of us being able to customize their onboarding experiences. So for instance, if an individual is going from one department to another, they're going to be simply assigned some very standard task assignments, such as, update your location and banner. It may say things like update your AU alerts, or, update your contact, your emergency contact information. And these are just some random ones. Update your ID card. It may say things like that. However, if let's say an employee is going from, what's something that could randomly happen? Someone moving to facilities. I won't say where they came from, but if they're moving to facilities, they will receive a customized facilities checklist in addition to the standard transfer, or internal is what we call them, internal transfer checklist as well. So again, if you can think of some very unique processes within your respective department, please let us know, because we would love to have customized special checklists for those respective individuals.
So you do have another follow-up comment. Let's see, Lindsay Petty said, great to know. She didn't know about that. So she wants to clarify, can we have our own checklist that onboarding can add?
I think for the most part, we're going to have very standard ones that have to exist. So for instance, an individual that is external to the university coming into the university is going to have to complete new hire paperwork. So that's a series of about 5 or 6 tasks that every single employee is going to have. And so they're probably going to be assigned that checklist regardless. But then absolutely, they, if you are in a particular division or a department that has a very unique list of tasks that need to be completed, we can absolutely add that as well. And what we have found is that the reason why we have them broken up in more like chunks is because People Admin doesn't really allow for a lot of modification. And what we notice is that various employees have very unique nuances to them. So for instance, faculty members, we've got our full-time, we've got tenure track, we've got, benefits eligible, we've got 9 months, we've got all these unique nuances. And thus each one of those employee types has their own respective checklist. So when you ask about having your own departmental checklist, just think about the fact that what are the different types of employees within your department, and how will those checklists need to vary to accommodate each respective employee type that you possess. So ultimately, our goal would be to find what are the unique tasks, and we add them on to not necessarily another checklist, but we add them on to that individual employee. So again, if they're being hired into your department, they may be assigned a new hire checklist. They may be assigned a benefits eligible employee checklist. They may be assigned a full-time external employee checklist. And again, I know I'm using a lot of jargon here, and I do apologize. I think once we get to that portion of the presentation, when I show it to you in the system, it may make much more sense. Go ahead.
So let's see, there are a couple of things in the chat. Let's see, Missy says, I learned that good onboarding is an onboarding process for about 6 months to a year. I believe that that is really true at Auburn. It takes longer to learn all the different processes and procedures. New hires need help with the processes and need to have a good relationship that welcomes their questions to help them be successful. And you've got another comment or question. What is the typical timeline from offer letter signed to that person's first day on campus? And what is the average amount of time it takes to get all of the tasks done for HR onboarding?
I love that question. Oh my goodness. And honestly, that's another one of those. It really depends on the employee's particular situation. So we're going to have employees that have, I guess another follow-up to that question would be, are we talking full-time employees? Are we talking student employees? The reason why that makes a difference, or faculty or foreign national employees, all of those are going to have different timelines as to when their information can be completed and fully onboarded. And so let's talk about some examples of that. One would be your foreign national employees. Foreign national employees would, or rather foreign national hires would need to make sure that they have gone through tax compliance. That information then has to be relayed to onboarding before we're able to complete work authorization. And if there are any issues within that component of the process, then that can completely delay everything that happens subsequently. So again, that's a unique situation. Let's talk about, an individual that's moving across country, specifically our students. Oh my goodness, our student hires are often difficult, and we love them, but if they didn't bring all of their proper documents, we have some students who come here prepared to work, so they've got all of their work authorization documents with them. If they do, then we can probably complete that process within a week from the time the hiring proposal is finalized, them completing all of their tasks, us completing the work authorization component, and then being entered into Banner. It could take us, really, it take a lesser time than that, but let's say, about a week. But for those students that don't have their work authorization documents and have to convince their parents to mail them these documents, it can take weeks. Another component of that I want to make sure we understand is a lot of what we have going on is at the discretion of the employee. If your employee sits on their new hire paperwork for weeks and don't take action, then it can delay the process significantly. We do try to, prompt them to say, hey, you've got to take action. We have email triggers within our email, within the people admin system that will send them notifications and say, hey, you've got tasks you got to complete. And there may be a deadline attached to them, but a lot of people don't read. My staff has internal conversations quite often about the lack of reading. And I don't want to place this on our professional staff because they are pretty much really, really good about making sure they take care of everything they need, because this will impact their livelihood. Whereas student employees, not necessarily the case. So they may halfway read something, or they may not read it at all and just give us a call and say, can you walk us step by step through everything that I have to do? So again, it really, really depends, but it can take as little as a week to get everything done, from the hiring proposal being finalized to a person being completely onboarded and successfully entered into Banner. I would also include that it would also depend on their hire date. So if their hire date is, let's say, 3 or more months out, please note that although they can complete all of their onboarding processes early, we have an inherent HR rule that if they are 90 days or more to their start date, we do not enter them into Banner, because we do not want them to have access to university systems with that much time before they are actually an employee of the university. So again, if it is several months out, we do wait before they are actually entered into Banner, but they are able to complete all of their other onboarding tasks. What's the next question?
That's all in the chat right now.
Awesome. Great job. I'm so grateful for your participation. All right, let's go ahead and kind of jump back on on the presentation. So we'll go ahead and move past what we've learned, because I did hear some comments about knowing that onboarding takes a bit of time. And I'm grateful that that's starting to resonate, because we still get a lot of comments that, onboarding is just a new hire paperwork in orientation. And it is so much more than that. Again, we do hope to engage with that employee from a new hire perspective upwards of about a year, if not more, depending on their personal situation. So again, it's extremely much more involved than people believe it should be, or that it is. All right, let's go ahead and talk about Elise. So this was an interesting scenario that we engaged in. And basically it was about, a young lady joining Auburn University during modified operations. She relocated from across the country. She was unable to establish relationships with her colleagues because of modified operations. She had a teenage son that was having difficulty adjusting to the new situation and new environment. She's been unable to, access various integral resources that is needed to complete her job efficiently. And she also doesn't feel very welcome by her coworkers and colleagues. And so you would be surprised of how realistic this situation actually is. And to be very, very honest, this did not encompass one individual person, but it did encompass comments that we've received from people through anonymous surveys. And I really just kind of compiled, various comments and created this individual. But it's so relevant, it's so realistic, and it happens more frequently than you would believe. So again, this is another opportunity for you guys to engage with me and really just kind of talk to me about, from a supervisor's perspective, what are some things that we can do to ensure that we are able to support this individual, and what we could have done better in advance of her initial hiring period to make sure she was not experiencing certain things. So again, I'm going to open it up for you guys, and we won't spend much time on here because there's so much great content that we need to get to within the next 30 minutes.
I had one thought. It says that she was having trouble accessing integral resources. Was she having that same problem when she was working remotely?
Yeah, but here's one of those things, depending on the level of training, let's say that you don't know what you don't know. So not knowing that you should have these particular resources, and that being the actual case, an individual had no idea that they had access to these other resources that would help them do their job more efficiently. And it was not until, this conversation where the supervisor asked, well, are you using X, Y, and Z? And she's like, no, I didn't even know I had access to that. And we've actually, I've even heard someone in a higher up position making a very similar comment, like, I didn't even know that I was supposed to have these banner screens accessible to me. I didn't even know that I was supposed to have this in order for me to do my job efficiently. So one of the comments that we've received from our post-onboarding survey that we conduct is a lot of people, especially during modified operations, found alternative means or methods to complete their job. Again, so working remotely, you may not be able, we've had an employee here that really had difficulty with the VPN. And so she had to find modified ways to complete her job. So I've read a lot about that in our post-onboarding surveys, that people were just trying to figure out a way to make it happen. And again, sometimes it was for the better, but sometimes what would have normally taken them an hour to complete now takes them 3 hours to complete because they didn't have access to the right systems. So yes, I would say that in this particular situation, she did not have access to those resources during modified operations from the very beginning, but she did not know that she was supposed to have access to them. So in the meantime, she made a way to get the job done.
I guess on that part, that's her and the supervisor's fault. Because the supervisor saw she was getting the work done, but didn't know, because she was working remotely, how much longer it was taking her to do. So I had a new employee who had started work. She'd been here about 6 months, and that's when we went to remote operations. I gave her everything I thought she needed to do her job. If she didn't tell me she was missing a piece, I didn't know to get it for her.
Yep, you're spot on. But again, in this particular situation with her starting off remotely, and in modified operations, not knowing what she should have had access to, Mariah and Kim allowed me to see some of the responses, from individuals that had, comments about this. And I did see some where people were saying, again, not really knowing what was needed and not knowing what normalcy looked like, so not knowing, here's one for you. And again, this is us just now being, what's the word that I want?
It's almost like she didn't know what to ask for, and the supervisor didn't know what to tell her.
Absolutely. So again, that's just about
lie.
miscommunication and perhaps ineffective training could be to blame for this, because perhaps if they had a more efficient training, the supervisor would have been showing her all the different programs that she needed, or all the different screens or software that she needed to do her job well.
I wouldn't say the supervisor wasn't trained. I've been here 25 years and I do this stuff secondhand. I do it in my sleep with my eyes closed. So when I go to train my new people, it's almost like my brain forgets they're brand new and they don't know. So I may skip steps because I know the shortcut, even though I want them to be trained properly.
Absolutely. Oh my God. Jean will tell you the same thing. I absolutely did the exact same thing here in the onboarding center. I was aware of all the university policies and all the university nuances. And I forgot several steps because, like you said, I knew it like the back of my hand. So it was second nature to me, but not understanding how I needed to effectively communicate to them with those expectations and things. So you are spot on with that. Absolutely.
I'd like to sort of jump in here too. Bill talks about managing by walking around. And if you've heard his class before, any of his classes, he mentions this on several occasions. And one way Bill does that with Mariah and me is he may stop by the office, or we have weekly one-on-one sessions. And just to catch up, it's not a means of accountability for us by any stretch. It's just making sure we're all on the same page. And he never fails to ask, what do you need from me? What do you need from me? Or how is this going? What can I do to help you with this? Or are there any roadblocks or challenges you're seeing? Or is there something? So I think once we're in constant communications too, it really helps. Carrie, I'm seeing your comment, and I think you have to be very candid and say, I'm not spying. I'm building a relationship. I'm building a relationship, and I'm just making sure you've got everything you need to succeed.
Agreed. That perception can be changed with some communication. Yeah,
absolutely. But then at the same time, I think this is a good time maybe to mention onboarding is a big piece of it, but also succession planning and cross-training your staff. So those things that you do on a regular basis, writing them down, I'll use Ashley Fettner as an example. She's our payroll manager. And the person who was here before her was in that role for over 30 years. And so she knew it like the back of her hand. So when Ashley came in to begin, she had nothing. And so what she's been doing as she has started this position is she started to create what she calls the payroll Bible, where she's putting all those processes and procedures step by step into a book. So when she leaves, the next person doesn't come in blind. So, and that's just part of cross-training and succession planning too. Okay, keep going, Kristine. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I love your comments. I think they're spot on. It gave me goosebumps because we are trying to do the exact same thing. And I don't think we often realize how important that component of it is as well, especially as this focuses about onboarding. But in order to successfully onboard, if this is not a brand new position and this is one where someone is replacing someone else, how important is it to have some type of resource that they can be handed? Our ID card services specialist, Jennifer Gilliland, that was exactly what her goal was. So when she came over here, she wrote down every process. We have a book here that helps every one of our onboarding specialists complete various tasks for her job. Just in case she's not here, if she's out, we can pick up exactly where she left off and be extremely efficient at it. But just some things to consider. And I made this comment when we first started. Each employee comes to the university at very different places in their lives and with even greater variance in their transitional needs. So without appropriate support, we increase the likelihood for work-related stress, underperformance, lack of recovery efforts, and turnover and tension as well. So again, I want you guys to think about, how this really can impact your team. Onboarding is so much more than what people believe it to be. You would be surprised at how many people in our onboarding, our post-onboarding surveys say things like, I did not feel welcome by my team, or the culture, I wasn't able to resonate with the Auburn culture, because again, we talk about this Auburn family, but people don't know what that means. They don't know what War Eagle means. They don't understand our culture. So how important is that component of the onboarding process? And no, I don't anticipate that a supervisor have a sit down with the employee and have those types of discussions. But think about how important it is in terms of your departmental culture and how you integrate someone into that, so that way they don't feel like an outsider coming in, or they don't spend several months in that process just trying to get acclimated to your culture. Because again, that then can have unintended consequences where very early on in the process, that individual is already looking for another position or another job. And I'm not sure to what extent, I do believe, and Kim and Mariah helped jog my memory, I know Bill has recently done a session about creativity, but is there one about culture in the workplace? Or maybe this may be something that the Office of Diversity and Inclusion has done, but do we have any current trainings that are related to the culture and climate of an organization?
It's a really good question.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot either, but
No, that's okay. I think that culture piece is sort of spread out across like succession planning, creativity. I don't know, Kim, is anything coming? I don't know that there's one specifically for that.
No, I don't believe there is, but I mean, because it's even covered in emotional intelligence,
Yes.
which is a huge piece of it.
Absolutely.
And there's even a psychological safety class in the workplace now too. So I do think it's sort of spread out, but you're going to see hints of that in many of the classes that are offered.
Yeah, I'm
So
so
it may not be a bad idea to develop something like that. So, Mariah and I may put that on our radar. So that's a good question.
Yeah, I apologize for putting you on the spot, but it made me think about that because we talk a lot about that within onboarding about, culture is important, because depending on the culture of your environment can determine whether someone's with you for 5 months, 5 years, or 50 years. And we have been doing a mass reprint of all employees. We're printing new IDs. And again, this has nothing to do with this conversation, but what I've noticed as we are printing people's IDs, we can see their job history and when they started. And one of the things that hit me is people are here for the long haul. People are here for 10, 15, 20 years easily. And it's more common than not. So that meant something to me to say, I am a part of something that's bigger than myself, something that's going to be here for a long time. And how do I want to make my mark on it? So I think that's something that we need to think about as we're onboarding employees. Do we see this employee here for the long term? Does this employee see themselves here for the long term? And then as a supervisor, have I cultivated an opportunity for that employee to, one, make an immediate impact on my department in the university, and two, have I put them in a position where they can leave their stamp, with the university as well, because each one of us are here for a very unique reason, and not to get into faith or purpose or anything like that, but we do serve a greater purpose. And I've even had a conversation, and again, this is another aside, and this goes back to me not having a script, but I remember having a conversation with someone that said to me very specifically, I feel like the only reason I am here is so that way I can have this type of conversation with individuals such as yourself. And basically the conversation just surrounded on, and again, not to get too in depth or not to make anyone feel any particular type of way, but it was about women's empowerment. There was a young lady who was in a department and was struggling because not only did she deal with family issues, she was also trying to return back to school and get a degree, and just had so much on her plate. And it was to the point where we sat in my office and we were both crying. And I'm not a crier. I'm actually tearing up now thinking about that conversation. But she said, Kristine, even though I am here in this position now and have been working here for a while, it's not what I want to be, but now I understand my purpose is because I'm here to support women like yourself. And there was a couple of other females in our office that she was having that encouraging conversation with, but she said, now I feel my purpose has been served. Now I know this is what mark I was supposed to make it so I can help build up the other women that are in my office and in my surroundings. So again, I don't mean to kind of stand on a soapbox, but I want you all to understand how, again, culture and the relationships, again, can impact an employee's tenure with the institution. All right, so let's jump into this. Do we have any questions or comments or concerns?
Yes, Kristine, you got a couple of
Go ahead, Jean. Good to hear your voice.
That came from the chat box.
Go ahead.
One of the questions says, can you give us an example of the most difficult onboarding process you have encountered, and what did you do to resolve it?
Ooh, you want to give an example of that, Jean? We talked about this as a staff. I actually primed them on that. And I asked them as we were developing the scenario, we talked about what are some of the most difficult situations that you all have encountered. And more often than not, and I'll throw out one that I can think of and not to steal yours, Jean, if it's dealing with a foreign national. Did you want to tell that one? Go ahead and share that one. And again, we do apologize if anyone on this call knows this particular situation or knows this employee, but I think it was one of the most difficult situations that we dealt with. Go ahead, Jean.
Yes, I think one of the most difficult situations that we dealt with is when I had to do my first onboarding for a foreign national student, and it just so happened that the student I-9 admittance date had expired.
I-94.
I-94 had expired, and Equifax kept giving me an error, and I asked the student, can she print me out her recent I-94? And she did, and it was still the same. And as it turned out, she had to basically had to go back to Canada to get her passport stamped. And she had already been working for the university for that summer. So she had to quit and had to come back. And that was a very difficult, challenging conversation to have, especially with someone who has already been working for the university, and you tell them that, you have to stop working immediately and you have to go home.
Yeah. Yep. So basically she had to leave the States, and really it wasn't a physical exit entry. She just had to go to the border, and then she had to get an exit and re-entry into the States. But that was just awkward, again, especially dealing with a student employee having to communicate, how this impacts them. But that's one. And then two, one of the ones that I've dealt with is just someone, again, who has been extremely unhappy throughout the process, and when I talk about the processes, they have been frustrated because nothing worked out the way it should have been. There was no streamlined process. As the slide here says, talking about efficiency, it was very inefficient. They were extremely frustrated. And again, it set the precedence on what they could expect for the rest of the time that they were here at Auburn. So having those type of conversations, again, so it's those where, I can't access my task, or my hiring proposal, or they would not know, but their hiring proposal had not been finalized, and the department was under the impression that there were some things that we were supposed to be doing. There was a lot of miscommunication. So just having to have that employee in the midst of all of that is always frustrating. And again, just dealing with people that have real situations going on. So we've had a gentleman who said, hey, I'm in the middle of moving and relocating. I don't have any of my work authorization documents with me. And again, us having to turn them away, saying, I apologize, we aren't able to serve you, which means, again, this will ultimately delay your onboarding process in entry into Banner. So you won't be able to actively work on your first day. There was just so many issues that surrounded this particular individual's move to Auburn. But again, we try to do it with a smile. We try to do it and continue to let people know that if there are some obstacles, that again, this is not the Auburn way. This is not, something that they can anticipate as they move forward, that we are, again, here as a resource and support system. We do try to keep open communication. So as things do occur, we can let them know, hey, this has been resolved. This has not been So those are the type of issues that we've dealt with. And there are some, especially with the foreign nationals, again, when there are issues with them, they are on the verge of possible deportation. And that's a serious situation for individuals, especially those that are students. So those are very difficult conversations that we have to have with people. So thank you for that question. What other ones do we have?
You have a couple of comments, especially regarding new hires. I see one that says a peer mentor could help this with a situation, this person build relationship and know about necessary resources. In turn, those relationships with colleagues could help them with adjustment with her family is going through. And then
Can I make a comment about that one? So we have definitely been talking a lot about this mentor opportunity, but one of the things that has, again, created an obstacle is who manages that? You know, is this something where the onus is on the department, or the department then has some mentors? We've also talked about maybe some associations or affinity groups within the university offer mentorship opportunities. Perhaps it is something that HR manages, where we have just a host of individuals that volunteer to be and not employees of HR, but HR manages it and opens the door for people throughout the university, you know, to volunteer to be a mentor. And then we have that opportunity to, again, pair new hires up with them. So that's been part of the obstacle, is the logistics of that. How do we manage it? How do we, you know, not create an awkward situation in terms of bias, or, you know, there's a lot. What if we have, you know, more employees that seek this resource than we do have mentors? And does that then create more burnout for that particular employee, because they're the only individual that can be paired with this group of individuals, and not necessarily from a demographical standpoint, but however we decide to pair people with. But there's so many nuances to that, but we have explored that option and will continue to do so. That is on our radar. All right, what else do you have, Jean? What I'm going to try to do is, we have so much more. I had no idea that 45 minutes was going to fly by so fast. So I do, I'm going to take those comments from you, Jean, in just a second, but I do want to at least get to some of the resources that I can share with you all. So this one says, you know, what are the real implications of efficient and inefficient onboarding practices? We have talked a little bit about that. Inefficient onboarding processes can prohibit employees from transitioning effectively in their new roles. We've talked about that a little bit. Again, this may result in higher rates of turnover, which has significant consequences. And we've talked about this during the supervisor pathways orientation. Again, one of those issues is, if I don't put forth the time and effort with this new employee, I'm going to put forth the time and effort to have to do this all over again, from the, you know, the publicizing the position, to having to do a new search, to having to do the onboarding process all over again. And again, that's an exhaustive process. It strains your finances, it strains your human resources. So again, they have very significant implications. When there are efficient onboarding processes, it creates the opportunity for departments to truly encapsulate the meaning of an Auburn family. And again, that's what we want to see more of. The more that onboarding can work with the departments and the supervisors specifically, it does allow them to recognize very early on in the process that we are a true family. So if they are receiving communications from the supervisor, Ms. Burnett, if they're receiving communications from the department, as well as from onboarding, they're going to be like, oh, these people are really vested in me, in my transition, you know, so that lets them know that we are working together as a family. All right. And then one of the comments that was shared with me was a comment from one of the supervisor pathway participants. And it talks about just ensuring that there is emphasis that is placed on putting the human first and the employee second. So recognizing that these are people's lives, it's their livelihood, and making sure that we recognize them as an individual, and not just simply saying you are a button pusher, or you are another employee, or you're just, you know, another one, you know, that we actually humanize that individual. And I think that is so important. All right. So let's go to the next one. All right, some additional advantages, and we'll fly through these really quickly so we can get to the great stuff. Providing support through relationships, easing the transitional phase, improving job satisfaction. We want to increase retention. We want to promote commitment to organizational goals. We want to reduce workplace stress and increase employee engagement. All right, so I know a lot of people have asked about the timeline. We did have a question earlier about that. So I do want to kind of explain this as we wrap up. Well, we're coming in close to the final 10 minutes of this session. So what this means and what you're looking at is pretty much the overall timeline. So we hope that the hiring proposal for that individual is finalized at least 30 days before their hire date. Okay, and hiring proposal finalization is some more jargon between the departments and HR, but basically the hiring proposal finalization component is a component of our people admin system. So that is what triggers onboarding events. So as soon as a person has been offered a position, has accepted a position, has had their background check completed, then their hiring proposal is then finalized. And so we hope that that happens prior to 30 days before their start date. Sometimes it's less than that. Sometimes we have a very short window, and sometimes we have a greater window. So again, we hope, so everything that you're seeing right now is what we hope in the perfect world is what we're hoping for. Within or greater than 15 days before their hire date, we send them a pre-onboarding survey. The pre-onboarding survey is what asks them questions about their personalized situation. Are you commuting from across country, or how far are you traveling to get to Auburn? Are you local? Are you from the area? What are certain needs that you may have? And again, not to be so specific as we're asking them, do you have kids and things of that nature, but we are asking them about unique circumstances that will impact their transition to Auburn. This information is then provided to the onboarding specialist, and then we hope to then customize their onboarding experience as they come on board. Now, for individuals that are in the audience that are like, hey, I came through onboarding 6 months ago and I didn't get that. Well, these are things that have been recently integrated in our processes. So the pre-onboarding survey has probably been in existence for about the past 3 months, because prior to then, we weren't in a position to provide support when we were in modified operations. We could not provide the same level of support as we are at this time now that we're back in the office. The next one is the completion of people admin new hire tasks. We do hope that greater than 5 days before they are set to begin their position, that they have completed all of their new hire tasks within our people admin system. Greater than the first day of their start with Auburn, we're hoping that they have met with their onboarding specialist and completed their I-9 or their work authorization. And so we're hoping that they do that well in advance of their onboarding. Well in advance of their start date. So that way, by the time they begin, they have all systems in place, they have all appropriate access. But again, as that time frame shortens and we have a very tight window, it's unlikely that we will have everything in place by the time they begin. At the 30-day mark is when we do a new hire checkup. Again, this is where we just want to simply reach out to that individual and then just check in on them to see if there's anything that they need. Have they incurred any issues? We do also do a post-onboarding survey, which again is anonymous, so that way we can just be receiving constant feedback on our processes and how they can be improved. Again, this has actually been live since day one. We've always had this post-onboarding survey in place. We even did some unique ones that were specifically targeting modified operations and how this impacted employees. And then at 90 days, the 90-day probationary review is conducted. Now, we don't own the 90-day probationary form, but we do initiate that task within our people admin system. That is a responsibility of our onboarding team. And then we also hope to check in with employees at 180 days and 365 days. And again, that has been much more difficult during modified operations, but now that we are back and able to better manage our caseloads, we do hope again to pick up where we left off and make communications on a more frequent basis. All right, any questions about the timeline? I am going to continue through since we're on 6 minutes and we really didn't address any of the questions, but here's my thought, Kim and Mariah. What I may do is maybe post these questions anonymously on the general post, or maybe in the cohorts, and you can share it. But I can answer each one of those questions afterwards since we did not get to them today. But I do want to make sure that I show you guys some resources. The very first resource that I'd like to show you is our Onboarding Center website. Again, this is a very new resource that I think has only been live for maybe about 2, maybe 3 months. I think that's a stretch, but I do want to click it to allow you to see it. Hopefully it shares. Nope, it did not. Let's stop share. Because this is a very powerful resource. It has a lot of information that's specific to, oh, I opened the chat. You want to go ahead and ask some questions in the chat while I share my screen again?
Yeah, Kristine, we got a question about, let's see, would it be a HIPAA violation to ask about a person's background, such as were they involved in the community where they left from to join us?
I'm not sure if I understood that correct. Is it a HIPAA violation to ask them were they actively involved in the community? At what point in the process? Are you talking during the interview stage, or are you talking about after they have joined the team?
Yeah, because I think that's definitely two different answers.
Yeah, I definitely would say that if it's after they have been offered the position, then the question is, it could be rephrased to say, you know, if you were active in your community and you would like to be involved, Auburn does have resources and we can connect you with certain things to help you continue being active in that capacity. Where again, you're just opening up that door and not necessarily asking, you know, I would hate to, I don't think that's HIPAA, because HIPAA would be more if it is health related.
Thank you. I was going to say it's not a HIPAA violation, but it could potentially be a discriminatory question if it's asked in the interview.
Yep.
So you would want to wait until after they join the team and sort of rephrase it like Kristine said.
All right, am I still sharing? Or I at least, because we're on 4 minutes, and I at least want to share this with you. So this is the Onboarding Center website. This has a ton of information for everybody. So there's specifically resources for new employees. This will link them to all kind of community resources. It connects them to all different type of things that they need to know related to that process in terms of the new hire onboarding process. It gives them a timeline of when things need to occur. There's also departmental resources. The departmental resources is really good because this allows them to see, this allows you as the department to see where you fit into this. So it talks about how to create that experience that we talked about. It talks about who is involved. So here we have supervisors. Even though your section is not very long, you still have a responsibility that is critical. And we also have some workflows. I know I've received a ton of questions about, let me better understand the process involved. And so that's a thing as well. You can actually click on each one of these so that way you can see the logistical flow and where its steps take place. There's also one that goes beyond. So much of this at the top is related to the people admin process and what that looks like. As you go down further, there's one that's specifically related to the onboarding process and what that entails as well. And so I do want you guys to at least know that this resource does exist for you if you want to browse it at your leisure. All right, I believe we are almost up on time. I do want to make time for any open questions that you have. We did not get through the entire presentation, but that's perfectly fine. Maybe if we didn't do so bad today, Mariah will invite me again. I don't know, Kim, your thoughts, but it doesn't have to be anytime soon. It could be an annual thing. I just want to make sure that I serve, you know, the community. So you guys just let me know what direction you need me to take. But if you're not opposed to me answering those questions online, I'd be happy to do so at my earliest convenience.
Yeah, we can talk about that. Before we let y'all go, if you didn't get to scan this QR code, if you would, it'll just help Kim and I get you those engagement points and take attendance. If you can't scan it, no problem. We have other ways of capturing attendance. And I think a few of you already let me know that you couldn't scan it, so no problem, we've got you. Thank you so much, Kristine. This was awesome. Of course, we'd love to have you back. And I know we just scratched the surface, but Kristine, we'll talk about how we can get those answers from you here in just a minute.
I love you guys. Thank you for having me. And again, I hate that we didn't get to everything that we wanted to, but next time we'll schedule maybe an hour and a half, or maybe I just want to talk so much. Either way, we'll just make sure that we can address your needs, because this was supposed to be more about you than it was me. But hopefully you gleaned something out of this. And anything you need from us. I wanted to make sure I put my contact information on there, so I'll drop it in the chat and I'll have Jean do the same thing. And thank you guys for everything. I'm glad.
Thanks, Kristine and Jean. We're so glad you guys joined us on this gorgeous Friday afternoon. We hope you have a good weekend.
Yes, Jean, thank you as well. Oh my gosh.
No problem. Likewise.
Jean is awesome, you guys. This is a phenomenal team. And again, this is one of those things where as you are onboarding, you want to make sure that the team is there that's going to, you know, lift you up. You're going to be excited to go into work with them and spend 8 hours with them since you're away from family. Like, this is a team that I look forward to getting up, you know, and spending my day with. I do love my family as well, so I look forward to going home to them. But if I had to be with anyone else throughout 8 hours of the day, you know, I want to be here with these guys because they are absolutely phenomenal. All right, so thank you guys, you know, for having me today. I hope you got something out of it. I applaud your efforts in being on supervisor pathways, and please let me know if we can assist you in your journey along the way. We're happy to assist.